Do your consumer marketing efforts feel complicated? Experian Automotive delivers data-driven marketing solutions to find new customers and keep loyal ones, drive measurable results with trusted data and expert support. Learn more at Experian.com/automotive.
Welcome to Daily Drive for Thursday, September 25th, 2025. I'm Kellen Walker in Las Vegas. Today on the show, Bosch plans to cut 13,000 jobs to bring down cost. Honda cancels a midsize EV built by General Motors after just one model year. And the UK works on two options to help JLR suppliers. Plus, GM's supply chain chief, Jeff Morrison, talks about how the automaker is working through growing challenges related to trade and tariffs.
Automotive supply chains are very complex, and I think we all know that, and we all talk about that. You can simplify them. You can shorten them.
Let's run through all the news you need to know to keep up in the auto industry. Bosch will cut 13,000 jobs, or about 3% of its global workforce. That's as the world's biggest automotive supplier battles a sluggish market, high cost, and pressure from rivals that have left it with an annual cost gap of $2.9 billion. Bosch said in a statement today that it wants to reduce costs as quickly as possible. On top of the job cuts, it wants to reduce material and operating costs, lower investments in facilities and buildings, and streamline logistics and supply chains. American Honda has ended production of the Acura ZDX, an electric midsize crossover built for the brand by General Motors. The cancellation comes after just one model year and fewer than 20,000 sales in North America. The ZDX is a product of Honda's collaboration with GM, and it shares underpinnings with the Cadillac Lyriq. GM began assembling the vehicle in early 2024 at its plant in Spring Hill, Tennessee. An Acura spokesperson confirmed the cancellation, citing the brand's need to, quote, better align our product portfolio with the needs of our customers and market conditions, as well as our long-term strategic goals. And the UK is considering a financial lifeline for Jaguar Land Rover's suppliers. That's after a shutdown caused by a cyber attack was extended until October. According to the BBC, the government is considering a plan to purchase components directly from suppliers. It's also considering another option, providing government-backed loans to suppliers. However, the BBC says that idea is not popular with parts makers. JLR has 3 factories in the UK, which together produce about 1,000 cars per day. According to the BBC, the automaker is losing at least $68 million a week, with many of its 33,000 staff members instructed to stay home. And those are today's headlines. You can find more details on all those stories at autonews.com. Joining me now to talk about Honda's decision to cancel the Acura ZDX is Carly Schaffner, who covers Honda and other automakers for us at Automotive News. Carly, welcome back to Daily Drive.
Thanks, Cal. It's good to see you.
Good to see you, friend. So, why has Acura had such a tough time selling the ZDX?
It's a good question. And I don't think it's a matter of necessarily them having a tough time selling it, because initially they were criticized for being late to the game on EVs when there was a rush to market, especially in that compact crossover segment. They actually had one of the first midsize, so they had a unique offering. They were teaming up with GM, which essentially rushed them to market. And I think, especially according to the dealers, they were losing a lot of customers to other brands that had EVs. So it was a really good transitional product for them as they worked on hybrids, because that has been their strategy all along. However, while they were eligible for the $7,500 tax credit that came from the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, they were throwing a lot of incentive dollars at it to get people into the vehicles. And I know that they were targeting loyalists, and Acura and Honda both have good incentive programs for loyal owners. So they're moving them between vehicles. However, it was expensive. So, they were just under 100,000 sales in North America, which I believe Lance Wolfer, who's their sales chief for both brands, said it was tracking and meeting their expectations. I just think that now their focus is on, like I said, pivoting to hybrids and then the next in-house battery EV from Acura, which is going to be the first from their own platform, the RSX. So their focus is just elsewhere now, and it was time to stop.
And what does this say about the health of Honda's partnership with General Motors to build EVs?
That's an interesting question. And while official word from the company is that the relationship is great and developing the products, the Honda Prologue and the Acura ZDX, it took a lot of collaboration. We did see some fracturing, if you will, in the partnership back in late 2023 when they stopped moving forward with their project to develop affordable EVs. Now, at the time, obviously the EV market has changed a lot in just that short amount of time. But at the time, affordable EVs was a kind of North Star for all automakers to get there. And so them working together on that phase made sense, but Honda pulled the plug on it. So it kind of signaled that there was some kind of maybe like disagreement in the partnership. I don't want to speculate. However, this is another sign that maybe the partnership isn't making that much sense for them. Additionally, while Honda said that the Prologue will continue, which is, the other GM jointly developed EV based on the Chevrolet Blazer EV, an analyst that I spoke with said that he predicts that it will stop production by the end of the first half next year. So it does look like a sunsetting for both projects. But like I said before, they are focused on their own battery electric platform. Marysville, which is the first of 3 existing factories that are being upgraded for electrification, is going to come online and start producing that Acura RSX. And dealers will want a more Acura defined vehicle. The ZDX did have the Type S trim because they wanted to maintain that kind of performance ethos of the brand, but they're going to be able to pour more of that into their own product.
Gotcha. Good stuff, Carly. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Cal.
Coming up, General Motors purchasing chief Jeff Morrison talks about growing challenges in the automotive supply chain. That's next on Daily Drive.
Automotive News Shift podcast brings you the latest on automotive technology, trends, and transformation. I'm Hannah Lutz.
And I'm Molly Boygon. We're the new co-hosts of Shift, and we're excited to bring you new conversations with experts and industry insiders like this one with Larry Dominique, president of LD Management Consulting.
I do believe the legacy OEMs are falling into a trap. They've got to find a way to, in some ways, build a new airplane while they're still in flight.
Catch Shift, available every Sunday, wherever you get your podcasts.
Are you an automotive marketer navigating today's rapidly evolving landscape? Finding new customers and nurturing existing relationships can feel like a complex journey. But what if you had a powerful engine fueled by trusted data to guide your way? That's where Experian Automotive comes in. We understand the challenges you face. Today's personalized consumer journeys demand intelligent planning and precise execution. That's why we offer the Experian Marketing Engine, a coordinated suite of data-driven solutions designed to help you develop, execute, and most importantly, measure effective marketing campaigns. At the heart of our solutions is Experian's trusted data and a dedicated automotive team committed to your success. We empower you to drive measurable results with unique data insights, including identity solutions to help you better connect with your ideal customers with greater accuracy by cleaning and enriching your first-party data. Consumer and market insights helps you gain a deeper understanding of market trends and consumer behavior, enabling you to better target consumers. Targeted audiences to help you pinpoint and target the right prospects at the right time with the right message. Better data truly connects you to better results. Stop guessing and start driving measurable impact with Experian Automotive. Ready to transform your automotive marketing? Visit Experian.com/automotive to learn how our data-driven solutions can help you find new customers, keep loyal ones, and navigate the road ahead with confidence. That's Experian.com/automotive. Take control of your marketing journey today.
Welcome back to Daily Drive. I'm Kellen Walker. Supply chain risk detection, resilience, and flexibility have always been important, and the COVID pandemic made that even more apparent. But President Donald Trump's trade war has only made those efforts more critical for automakers and large suppliers. Jeff Morrison is General Motors' Senior Vice President of Global Purchasing and Supply Chain. He spoke with Automotive News reporter Lindsay Van Hully about how GM is navigating those challenges.
That idea of long-term planning and short-term flexibility it definitely has been something we've heard about a lot in the last year, but I know for GM, that's been something that the industry's really had to grapple with over the last several years, whether it's the pandemic or semiconductors or other supply constraints. Is that something that you feel like now that it's just part of the playbook? I mean, is it at a point where things have just changed so much or so quickly that that's kind of almost the status quo now?
Yeah, I think it is. And honestly, we've been very focused on partnerships and how do we work together with our suppliers in a much better way. And I think that's been like a very foundational element of it. I think that's really paid off when you look at what are the challenges from a supply chain standpoint when you get into a situation like COVID, semiconductor crisis, when you start looking at how do you start building out supply chains for electric vehicles. And even now, just how do you address resilience and just kind of this ongoing challenge that you have. And I think the one of the common threads that we've seen through that is just the need for us to really understand and map our supply chain better and figure out where we need to engage deeper beyond the tier one level, but really in some cases going all the way back to mines and processing and critical minerals.
And it's interesting because that knowledge, being able to map that has become even more important. Had that been something that had always been kind of on the automaker's radar, or is this something really that's over the last few years has just become kind of mission critical almost?
I think both. We've always had the desire to really have that level of transparency and trust with our suppliers because as you can imagine, this is in a lot of cases, very sensitive information to share and could be competitive, and they want to make sure they don't like to share it in general. What we've really been focused on is earning that trust and then figuring out a way to do that in the best possible way together to be able to do that. And I think the proof points have been, we really can manage those risks and build that out better together and in a lot of cases, when we've got that level of kind of supply map transparency, we can start to identify risks within their supply chain. There may be a tier 3 supplier that is a supplier to 10 of our manufacturing partners, 10 of our tier 1 suppliers. And they may not be aware that there's that dependency risk. And so we can start to talk about that and start to manage it in a different way. And then the other thing that we've seen, especially with just supply chains in general that are just in time, any disruption can ripple and have an effect on all of our suppliers and our ability to build vehicles. And so the earlier we can detect that, I think we've been able to provide just a ton of value to our suppliers to be able to call them up in the middle of the night and say, hey, we just got an alert that there was an incident and this may be one of your sub-tier suppliers. Let's take a look and start taking countermeasures pretty quickly.
Is that something that GM is now kind of requiring of its tier ones, or is it something that you're encouraging them to do and you've got tools that help them be able to do that?
I think as we think going forward, our strategic partners are going to be the ones that are fully transparent, do the supplier mapping that we need, and just work with us as partners to help mitigate those risks and just improve resilience overall. And I think kind of going back to the first question, the resilience has a high correlation with the flexibility and agility that we need to have. And so it's much better to kind of do that together.
So it's not something that GM is saying, tier ones, we need you to map out your supply chain, but we're encouraging you to do it. And we have some tools that can help you with that, or we can alert you to things that we're seeing from our data that we're collecting from across the industry.
So I would say we need you to map out your supply chains. We need you to be transparent. We need you to use the tools so that we can all kind of adapt to it. I would say if you don't do that, it just makes it very difficult for us to manage issues together. And I think that probably limits some of the longer term partnership opportunities. So in general, I would say we've got all of our suppliers that are really kind of bought into this and working with us.
And there's a toolkit, I think, that I understand 2022 is what I understand. It sort of came into being, but I wondered if you could talk a little bit about what that looks like. It sounds like some artificial intelligence and machine learning tools that you're using then to gather data and be able to spot some of those trends.
It is. So we're very focused on just improving capability from a digital supply chain standpoint. Mapping is one piece of that. So the better that we have that data aggregated, then we can match that with. We subscribe to a number of different news event sites, and we have AI tools that then go and look at those and help us to detect basically and do a incident report in advance. And then we've got AI tools that help us put all the critical information together and hand that to one of our, there still needs to be a human in the loop with what we do, but it helps us then be able to have a much more comprehensive view of what that risk is and more actionable and easier to action. And I think that's an example of something that when you look across the network of the number of tier nodes that we need to really kind of monitor and manage, it's really hard to. AI provides a great capability for them to be able to kind of go in and do that in a much broader scale and be able to get something that's put together in a more actionable way. So we don't need to have an analyst late on a Saturday night if there's an incident reliant on going and doing quality work. The AI tool actually gives them that head start. And we based on the benchmarking we've done, we think this suite of tools that we continue to kind of build on and get better at, we think this is like really leading edge and is just part of a number of things that we're doing from an AI standpoint to manage.
When you talk about benchmarking, is there an example of a real world case where this is actually played out in real time? I wonder if tariffs might be one of them, or being able to just kind of see visibility, whether it's an incident at maybe a fire at a plant, or whether it's trying to figure out where steel and aluminum comes from. Are there kind of a real world example of where this has given you kind of that insight you need?
Yeah, I think all those examples are really good. I mean, we've had incidents where we've been able to, if you have a tornado in the Midwest that looks like it's had some impact and damage, we're able to kind of go do a heat map of that and say there's 10 tier N facilities that are located there, and those are part of 5 of our tier 1 suppliers' supply chains. And so we can reach out proactively and say, there's been an incident. We need to we need to find out whether there's been an impact and a risk of supply, and start doing countermeasures immediately. And in supply chain, time matters. So if you can get ahead of that, even by, hours often matter, and, so that's one example. I think when it comes to tariffs, the transparency of really understanding what your supply chain looks like and is very helpful, because it gives you this great baseline for having any of these discussions to really understand in the current environment, what those risks are and how do we manage them together.
I think to your point earlier about trying to get visibility all the way down into the mines, for instance, with this, trying to figure out where components are sourced, is that something that then that tool becomes helpful in trying to map out those kind of sub-tier locations of all of those different elements that go into it?
It does, because what it starts to then identify, the deeper you map, at some point start to identify things that we want to actually take action on and have a more resilient kind of supply chain solution. That may mean changing the footprint. It may mean adding multiple suppliers. So we only know what we know. So based on those things, we can go ahead and take action on it. But the deeper you go and the more you get into this, what happens is you identify new nodes and new risks that maybe you weren't aware of before that you can actually go and do something about.
I think to the example you offered earlier about, you have 10 suppliers that use the same, sub-supplier.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds like an example of that kind of resiliency question that you're talking about. If you notice then that 10 companies are using the same
mm-hmm.
supplier, if that one supplier has an incident, then that potentially creates risk. What do you do in that kind of situation to, try and quickly find an alternative or a remedy?
So we work with our commodity teams and our suppliers and talk about the risk first of all, and then there's a number of countermeasures you can take. You could cut second tools and have a second supplier is one of the easier ones. But you could do strategic banking and just make sure that you've got enough buffer in case there are incidents that happen. But at least we can have that conversation with our suppliers and figure out what's the best way for us to manage that risk together.
That's also a key value to the suppliers, right? So their tier ones may not know the tier N. So that's kind of the value from the supply chain.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, and I think, we talked about it earlier, but it seems like until relatively recently, that wasn't something I think maybe that was as top of mind as it is now, just because of everything that's happened.
Yeah, I mean, I always go back to COVID, because I think COVID is really one of the most extreme kind of supply chain challenges that we had. And, there you're dealing with entire locations that are shut down and can't bring workers in and can't produce and can't ship. And so we know who all of our tier one suppliers are, but the more difficult risks for us to manage were really understanding where the sub tiers were. And if you go back in time, that would normally happen where we would have a supplier call up and say, guess what? I have a tier 3. They're in this location, and they're not able to produce and ship. And so at that point, there's some time lag that's occurred, but we would then help them and jump into action. And I think in almost every case, we're able to find a solution for it. Extraordinarily creative solutions a lot of times, right? And the whole idea is if we can do that earlier, if we can identify that and take countermeasures earlier, there's a huge advantage to that. And then secondly, we can just work together to say, is this really from a resilience standpoint? And automotive supply chains are very complex. And I think we all know that, and we all talk about that. You can simplify them. You can shorten them. And, the way you do that is by really understanding where you're at today and where you want to be.
That's Daily Drive for today. I'm Kellen Walker. Thanks to Automotive News executive producer Jake Neer, as well as our own Carly Schaffner for her reporting for today's podcast. You can get the latest news on supply chains, product plans, and everything happening in the auto industry at autonews.com. Come back tomorrow for a conversation with TransUnion's Sachin Merchant about what the Fed's recent rate cut means for dealership F&I offices.
Like you said, a step in the right direction, particularly coming from a consumer's mind as well as really a retailer and an OEM.
We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think of the show and the topics we covered today. Send us an email at dailydrive@autonews.com or leave us a voicemail at 313-444-2774. And if you enjoy the podcast, remember to like, leave a review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.